Welcome in, brand new Friday Scramble, July 1st, 2022. That's unbelievable. I'm Rick Gehman, that right there. Andy Lack. Andy, good to have you back, bud.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been a rough 48 hours for me with the Knicks giving $100 million to Jalen Brunson and a very slow start for my beloved High Flyers. But we're working through it, and it's great to be back with you today, my friend.
Well, I know you've been a lifelong High Flyers fan, so I do, send my empathy towards you in that. You played a lot of golf, from what I understand, which is like the best way to spend your time.
Yeah, no, I went out to Chicago for a couple of days, got in around at Butler, which is, probably one of the 50 best courses in the world. And then I also played at another course, Chicago Highlands, which blew me away, by the way. Was hosted by a big fan of yours as well, and a RickRunGood subscriber that I met through the podcast. So shout out to Ryan Feeney. I'm sure he's listening. But yeah, no, it was an incredible 48 hours. And that's kind of the stuff that I will happily do. Like if somebody invites me to play golf at a special course, I will travel halfway across the country for 36 hours to play, but I'm crazy.
That's sick. Well worth it. It sounds like. Couple of comments rolling in. Let me roll through these real quick. First off, Farmer John is asking about specific cut numbers. So the John Deere Classic is currently in a weather delay, so they're not playing as we speak, which is kind of good for what we're about to embark on. Go to cutsweats.com or follow Cutsweats on Twitter. They'll have all the information. Brian is asking the hard-hitting questions. Do I prefer East Coast or West Coast Andy? East Coast Andy, I think, is, Andy in the big city. He's got a little bit of spice to him. He's feeling good. He's
got
feeling
abstract art in my background.
Yeah, but I feel bad that this is now like his lunch hour on the East Coast, when normally it's like morning coffee time on the West Coast. I feel like it's more intrusive. I feel like the time is more intrusive for you, Andy, when you're on the East Coast.
A little bit, because on the West Coast, like Tuesdays and Fridays, scramble days, those are golf days for me too, because, we're done at 10 a.m. So I could go play golf when I'm done. The noon time makes it a little bit more challenging for that. But on the positive side, I do feel more awake at this time of day. I feel like I've already gotten a ton of I've been up for 5 hours. I've gotten a ton of stuff done already. So there's pros and cons to it, but I'd probably say East Coast Andy is my favorite Andy.
Yeah, East Coast Andy's a different vibe, which is good. But you got to have both Andys, right? You gotta have the balance there to make this all work properly. Couple of items. We're presented by PrizePicks. The code you're looking for there is Rick. There's a link in the description. 100% instant deposit match up to $100. We are back on them putting some really terrible lines out. So we'll get to that in just a second. But we are sitting in a weather delay, Andy, and we don't know how long it's going to take at the John Deere. So we could look at the live odds. We could look at the leaderboard. I'll just pull up the leaderboard. Let's just start there.
Yeah.
JT Poston hasn't teed off yet. And now seemingly that 12:54 tee time is going to be later, depending on how long this lasts. But he goes out and shoots a 62 for the second time in as many opening rounds for him. He's feeling himself.
Yeah. So the weather delay is basically, it doesn't seem like the course is getting a ton of rain. It's more of like lightning in the area, right?
I believe that they are concerned about electricity. Yes, it has not, as far as I've seen, rained a drop. That could change, but they were concerned about the electricity in the air.
Right. So that's kind of the question I have for you, which is, I was very surprised yesterday at how challenging the course played, especially in the afternoon. Yeah. I think it played like 0.75 over par in the afternoon. And I was going to, 0.65. Thank you. And I was going to say that, if we got some rain, if we got a bunch of rain and the course softened up and the greens became more receptive, then we wouldn't see that today. right? But it seems like we're not going to get a bunch of raids. The course is playing a lot easier today, so I would still feel like somebody who is kind of in the like a Lipsky or a Howell, obviously, or I guess even a Goddard up too, are guys I'm looking at. But how do you think do you think it's going to continue to play harder this week, or are we starting to see that we gotten the worst of it and we're starting to see that trend down?
Yeah, I think it's gonna get easier. I think there's
Me
only
too.
so much defense that they can put out there, and this has been an event that has been very, very consistent year over year in terms of like what the scoring averages have been. It's basically been 69.5 for like 5 straight years, basically something like that. So,
Right.
I think it'll eventually kind of get to that number despite playing harder than it played over par, I think, yesterday. So
Yeah.
I think it'll get easier.
Yeah. Of this, there's not exactly a murderer's row of players on the first page of the leaderboard, but who do you think kind of has the most staying power to you? Are you believing in the JT Poston thing? The thing that's interesting about Poston is, when he won the Wyndham Championship, like I'm pretty sure he made 0 bogeys throughout that entire week.
That's right.
And he was just when he gets hot, he gets so hot. And then he'll go away for like 6 months at a time. But he kind of seems like the streaky type of player that when he has it, you kind of want to ride him.
Yeah, I mean, he was literally last 24 rounds coming into this event, he was the best player in the field. It was like 1.2 strokes gained per round, and it was with top 10 finishes, right? So he's kind of tapped into a little bit of the ceiling. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's going to be in the mix. I like David Lipsky. I just love his game, and I like his ability. But there's like Chris Goddard, right? Such an unknown entity. Obviously, incredibly talented golfer. He won the Haskins Award. We don't know what his ceiling is yet.
Right.
And this is kind of a week where he might just show us that his ceiling is winning a PGA Tour event.
Right. He's a unit. I mean, that guy hits the ball.
Yeah.
He's a big, big boy, and he hits the ball a long way. Which I think on a course like this with relatively wide fairways, this is the type of course that he should be able to eat and just destroy these par fives and have a bunch of wedges in if he's driving it at least somewhere in the fairway. So I agree with you on both of those guys. I didn't bet Goddard up pre-tournament. I do have 100-1 on Lipsky pre-tournament that I'm feeling pretty good about. Some of the guys, even at 4, like I saw Svensson's at 4. I know he was a guy that I bet pre-tournament and was also, I think, a very popular pre-tournament bet. And then Scott Stallings is another guy who I think was a very popular option this week that started their tournament well. So if you can get those guys in the 30 or 40 range, I think you could do a lot worse.
Well, let's see. Because Poston is 3-1.
Never mind.
Got her up 10-1. Stallings 16. Lipsky and Von Taylor at 20 and 22. Svensson at 28. Yeah, you're not getting much. You're not getting a deal here, I don't think, on any of these guys.
Yeah, Svensson 28 isn't terrible, but no thanks on the Stallings 16. For me, that feels a little bit low. And even with the Poston thing, like I think with Poston, I imagine that once they resume play, which I don't know if that's going to be. Did they give us an update, by the way?
I haven't seen one before we got on air. I don't know if they've made an announcement yet.
Basically, how it works is they delay it and then they give us an update like every 45 minutes or something like that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And if it gets delayed too long, they'll let the guys re-warm up.
Right. So I imagine, and I was looking into Saturday morning to see if anything got funkier for the guys on Saturday morning, and Saturday looks to be pretty pristine as well. So even if some of those guys in the afternoon bleed over into Saturday morning, they might end up having an advantage because conditions on Saturday morning look pretty good too.
Interesting. We talked about Chris Goddard up for just a second. Are we just going to have 3 or 4 of these guys every year? Goddard up, Davis Riley, Cam Young, you go back a couple years, you get Zalatoris, and then you get the Wolf Hovland Morikawa crew. Like, we're just gonna get just like stars every year who are like 22 years old.
I think in a post-Tiger era, yeah, I think that these guys are athletes, right? I think that's the biggest thing that has changed that I've noticed the most is that, Goddard probably could be a football player or a baseball player. And like, you watch Cam Young swing the club, like that guy's an athlete, right? So yes, I would imagine that the pipeline is extremely strong. I think the only thing that you have to worry about is some of those guys going to LIV, right? Like the Oklahoma State guy, Eugenia Chikara.
Yeah.
Chikara, although he was very bad in round one of LIV. Again, but I hate the fireballs anyway, so no worries there for me. But yeah,
four over 76 for Chikara.
Right. Although I heard Pumpkin Patch was playing firm and fast, so we'll not get on him too much for that. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be the only concern is that some of those guys might be going to LIV. Like the past two U.S. amateur winners, Piot and Ogletree, aren't very good. I don't think those guys were ever going to be stars, but Chikara could be a star, right? Pearson Coody, he might be a star. Goddard, he might be a star, right?
Ogletree's not playing in LIV this week. Is he just like done now? Has he been cycled out of this?
Yeah, so that's a great question that I've been wondering myself too. Like I think he shot like 85 in one of the rounds and finished in dead last. My boy, Saddam Cake Kwan Janana, shot an 82 today. So you have to imagine that Saddam's on a pretty short leash as well. But I have no idea. Do they get relegated? I have no concept of how it works.
We'll talk about them more on the other side because there's other things I have questions about because they did say that they're trying to make it for next year where it's the same 48 guys, which introduces a lot of different wrinkles, which we'll talk about. But I want to get to the props here because we are. I mean, they might push these start times back actually because we got plenty of time on a lot of these. So we will look at the props on the other side. We will talk through the live board, see what's available, and see what we can find. But first, we are going to take a quick 30-second break.
Andy Lack is not only the co-host of The Scramble, but also produces his own show, the Inside Golf Podcast. It's available twice a week, focusing on course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategies for every PGA Tour event. Admittedly, I was drawn to Andy for his data-driven approach, which you'll find on his Sunday shows as he breaks down the field. But I'm even more impressed by his passion for course architecture, which offers a different perspective of our great game. Mix those together with insightful and humorous guests who don't take themselves too seriously, and you've got a recipe for a great podcast. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts.
Okay, Andy, let's prop it like it's hot here. Here's the board over at PrizePicks. And I don't know if you were accessing Twitter while you were gone, but you know how we were wondering whether these birdie or better matchups were a trap or not?
Yes.
I don't think they are. So last week, the headliner, just blindly following the headliner, was like 26, 10, and 2. And then the week before that, I think they were big winners as well. I haven't gotten the numbers for yesterday yet, but I don't think it's a trap at the moment.
You're right, because the past couple of weeks that I've been playing, I've been doing quite well just taking the very simple strategy of taking the better player. Although I will say, looking at it today, it does seem like they've tightened up the matchups a little bit. Like Matt McNeil
versus Svensson. Yeah.
Right. Matt McNeely probably should be matched up with Cam Davis. Those are, Denny McCarthy, Nick Hardy. All these guys are now a lot closer in betting odds and DraftKings prices. So there's not that one kind of glaring, this guy stands out the most. Cam Davis and Matt McNeely, both of those guys, I bet pre-tournament. Cam Davis, so I tracked them a bit yesterday. Cam Davis was a lot more impressive to me than Mav McNeely, although both played well and kind of stumbled down the stretch. So I'm really high on Davis going forward, and that's probably the one over McNeely that stands out the most to me. He also makes a ton of birdies, by the way.
He makes a ton of birdies. Very
Not
high
that
upside
Mav
golfer.
doesn't, but
right.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I wonder if these are intentionally closer or if that's the nature of the field that we have this week, where I think a lot of guys are kind of similar. So we'll keep an eye on this. Now, the strokes yesterday were like, I think they were all 69.5 or something like that. They've been adjusted down to basically 68.5 or 69. The course playing close to 2 shots under par last time I checked. So if you think that, these guys are going to go out and gain like a half a stroke on the field, like you're kind of on the underside of these.
Yeah. I feel like these lines are pretty fair. No, I mean, the only one that I think it's really, really, I don't have the data of this up in front of me, but just anecdotally, I know how difficult it is to follow up a really, really low round.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Poston over, not that 69 is like a terrible round here, by the way, either. That's still shooting 2 under par. I mean, if he shoots 69 and is at 11 under par, there's a decent chance he might even be in the lead heading into the weekend. So I'd probably take the over on Poston there.
Yeah, and I was in the same boat, but I was thinking under 5 birdies.
Right. I like that too.
He has to make 6 to burn you, right?
Yeah.
Like, is he going to make 6 birdies or better today?
Right.
What he made, I mean, we shot like the round of his life yesterday and made 8, I think, right? He had 7 birdies and an eagle, and he's got to make 6 today to beat you. Feels pretty strong.
Yeah, that might be the one to target a little bit even more, is the total number of birdies, even more so than the stroke, because you're right, 5 does seem steep to me, a little steep.
Yeah, these guys, and I think yesterday they smashed the greens in regulation. Like basically all these guys went over yesterday. Because Lucas Glover is already out. So I think Lucas Glover was kind of like the one guy that burned everybody, but otherwise these guys are just hitting a ton of greens. I don't think they're going to get any rain or water on the course during this little weather delay. But if they do, it only helps these, right? Like there's only upside in hitting more greens and hitting more fairways if the course is wet.
Yeah. It's, the greens, like, again, 14, if for Poston to hit 14 of 18 greens, that feels like a lot. I know you said that most of them went over yesterday. 14 to me feels pretty high. But I guess these greens are pretty receptive.
It does, but so historically, well, I have the hold on, let me find somebody who is going out this afternoon. So like Denny or Poston or McNeely.
Yeah.
Okay. McNeely historically has hit 13 or more greens in 7 of the 9 rounds he's played here.
Wow.
I don't know, which is like, past performances do not indicate future returns or whatever, but like, I don't know. I think they're quite easy to hit.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It made me think about how, like in the NFL, you always take the highest over-unders over and the lowest over-unders under.
Right.
So maybe you kind of want to approach it from that sense.
Yeah, because it's like books know that it's either going to be really high or really low, but they can't set a total to like 65 and be like,
right,
bet the over on this. They got to entice you a little bit.
Right, exactly.
Other thing I noticed, and I don't know if you have been following this week, the LIV golf props are available.
Right.
Strokes and birdies are better, which yesterday, what was the leader at? 5. So Carlos Ortiz shot a 67. That was the best score that was out there. So there's a pretty wide range of props. I don't know if I have enough information or enough thoughts to make a lean on any of these.
Yeah. I mean, I did not do any research on Pumpkin Ridge. I did not spend a ton of time watching LIV. I followed what was going on through Twitter, and I talked to a bunch of people that watched it, and I caught some highlights this morning just to be prepared for if we were going to talk about it a little bit. But it's hard for me to sit here and feel confident about an edge that I would normally have with the PGA Tour, like a golf course that we have data on and players that we have data on. This feels a little bit more like a guessing game. I will say, just like eye test wise, Wolf does not really look like he's got it going on right now too much. I think Pat Perez shot a low round. I think he's probably a decent candidate for a little bit of regression. Same with Carlos Ortiz. And then, man, they've got Phil high. Like,
I thought it was interesting that Phil and McDowell's been horrible. Like in the 4 rounds that he's played at LIV. I think
so is Kevin Na.
Yeah, they've been like Graham McDowell might be super washed. Like I think he shot a 78 yesterday. He had a 78 in London. I think he had one good round in London, but it was like the final round when he was already out of it. This McDowell might be super washed.
Yeah, and Charles Schwartzel wins it, gets the $4 million, and then shoots like 77 in the first round too.
Can you blame him?
No.
Okay. I think that's all the props that we have. All right. So use the code Rick, link in the description. We'll continue to talk about LIV. I've got a couple other things I want to talk about as well. And we are heading into a very, very interesting stretch of golf. We'll talk more about that on the other side.
If you're not playing daily fantasy on PrizePicks, then you're not really playing daily fantasy. They offer nothing but props, and they do it better than anyone else. You pick 2 to 5 players on an over-under and can win up to 10 times on any entry. They allow mixed sport entries, meaning you can take the over on LeBron James and the under on Jon Rahm. The golf-specific props are amazing. Birdies or better, fairways hit, greens in regulation, round score, and now, yes, single hole props. That's right. What score will a golfer make on a specific hole? I have PrizePicks specific tools on my website to help you build the best entries, and now PrizePicks is offering a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Just use the code RICK at sign up or click the link in the description. That's code RICK. Good luck.
Okay, Andy, a little bit of breaking news here. The John Deere Classic will resume at 11:45 Central, so that's in about 20 minutes or so. And they have moved tee times back an hour. So it seems like they'll get everything in today.
Okay, cool. No, that's awesome. All right, I love that. So we'll get some more golf this afternoon. Yeah, it seems like they should be able to. These are like the longest days of the year. This time of year, right?
Yes. Yeah, like
we'll be
by
fine.
far. They've got so much sunlight.
Yeah.
I'm like going to bed while the sun is still out. It's outrageous how late the sun is out here.
Right, because both you and I are kind of early bed, early riser type guys.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm usually up are you up before 6 every morning?
Oh, I unfortunately
really
have not slept past. I cannot sleep. Even with no alarm, I cannot sleep past 6 o'clock. My body.
Wow. Okay, I'm usually like 6:30. So you're even earlier than me.
Yeah, which means I go to bed at like 9:30. So there's the other side of it too. Let's circle back on LIV for a second here. So obviously they're playing today, round 2, event 2. This one's in Portland. There was a report yesterday, and it was in Golf Digest as well, that for next year, the plan is 14 events and the same 48 golfers, which I believe causes a couple of ripple effects, Andy. One, to this point, in my opinion, the best thing could be the teams, and they've totally botched it with half a draft and then assigning teams or whatever. But if guys are not going to rotate teams and rotate in and out next year, that is objectively much more compelling. And the other thing is that means there's going to be like a hard deadline for guys to join, right? Because if they're going to say 48 golfers, same golfers, every event next year, you can't let somebody come in 6 events in. Now, maybe they will, but like that would indicate to me that when they start their season, there's not going to be a lot of like in-season guys going over there.
Right. And you're definitely a little more plugged in than I am on this stuff. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the next big wave is going to come. Eli actually just said it in the chat after the Tour Championship, right? Because there are players that probably want to try their hand at the FedEx Cup and then sign over to LIV right after and kind of get the best of both worlds. No?
Yes. I think we're going to see probably a couple guys go after the Open Championship just because they want to play a major championship unbothered by questions and
no
rumors
media
and
obligations
speculation.
about LIV. Yeah.
Correct. And then I think you're going to see basically what I believe like the last bunch for a while, like the last logical time to go is after the Tour Championship. I keep throwing Patrick Cantlay under the bus here, but like if you're Patrick Cantlay and let's say you did want to go to LIV, wouldn't you take a crack at winning $18 million on the FedEx Cup first? And the way that the schedule is designed for LIV is that if you did go after the Tour Championship, you'd only miss 3 events because 5 of them are after the Tour Championship on the schedule. So I believe that will be kind of a chunk of guys will go or whatever. And then by that point, if you like, everyone's made their decision by that point, right? You're either going or you're not. You've seen how this has played out for 3 events. You have the idea of what other guys are getting monetarily. Like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of seismic changes after that.
Right. So I think we can both agree that there's probably a pretty good chance that after the Tour Championship, LIV's going to get a couple more guys, right? Whether those guys are Cantlay or Hideki or who knows. They're definitely going to get guys that are probably higher quality than my boy Saddam. So my question is, what happens to the other guys? Did maybe Saddam and Andy Ogletree ended up being the smartest guys in the room because they're not even good enough to fill out the field? So did they get guaranteed money and now they just get guaranteed money to not play?
I hope they have good agents, right? I hope they got paid in advance and they got, money up front and guaranteed. And then they can, like, if I was Andy Ogletree, and I have no idea what happened, but let's assume they gave him $2 million, right? That's kind of like what they offered Pearson Coody. Like, let's say he got $2 million guaranteed, wired to his bank account 2 months ago. And then Greg Norman's like, all right, bud, like, listen, sorry, keep the money. We don't need you anymore. We're filling out this field. If I were Andy Ogletree, I'd be 1, thrilled. And I would 2, be like hands and knees begging to get back to the PGA Tour and just be like, I just got my money. Let me bounce now.
Right. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, I think part of it is that Ogletree maybe knows deep down that he's not good enough to be a successful member of the PGA Tour. So this does end up being his best case scenario. I'm very curious to see how it evolves because, the one biggest point that I wanted to make about this is that it is a startup, right? And so startups generally change a lot in the first year and a half. And you do see them kind of shooting by the hip, and it seems like they're making things up a little bit as they go and trying different things. I have no understanding of why they scrapped the draft. I don't really understand what's going on there. And then what's the point of the draft if some of the teams are already preordained and pre-decided?
Right.
So I'm very curious if things are going to look a lot different at the start of next year for them. And this was kind of the trial period.
Well, I think they, yes, they're definitely going to evolve. They're definitely going to change. The team thing, in my opinion, is the best thing. I want that for all tours, but you can't have it. You can't be half in on teams. you either have to have captains that draft new teams every single week, which I think would be incredibly fascinating. But these guys, they want to play with their friends, right? There's a reason the South African guys are all together, because they're buddies and they want to play together. And like, it's, Westwood and McDowell or whatever, like they just want to play with they want to play with each other. So, okay, in that case, then you can't be having guys swap in and swap out of the league all year long. It defeats the whole purpose. So you either have to have drafts every week or preset teams. Right now they have neither, but if they get to preset teams, like that's a much, much, much more compelling format.
Right. So I want to ask you, because I think I kind of feel differently about this than you. I have no need for teams in golf. I have zero interest in it. I think it's an individual sport. I love that it's an individual sport. I love the competitive starvation around the Ryder Cup. I think the Ryder Cup is maybe the most fun weekend every 2 years as a golf fan. And I think if we got something closer to the Ryder Cup every week or once every month or even every other year, it would diminish some of the value of what I believe to be the most fun event in the world as it regards to golf. So I'm kind of on the other side. I have zero interest in teams at all. I don't like it at all. I don't know who asked for it. I don't need it. I don't want it. So what is it about the teams that you think could work? Because I may be short-sighted or missing something on the team stuff.
So I guess it is at least one step closer to what my golf utopia is, which is teams that are formed by a meritocracy that are, you could sign free agents, you could trade guys. Ricky Fowler would be released from a team because he's not playing very well. You'd have a year-long not news cycle, but like the NFL is so compelling because
right,
the draft, the training camp, free agency, trades, all of that. The other thing is, and I agree with you, I don't need to see these guys necessarily play like a scramble or alternate shot or anything like that. They are playing their own individual ball and just taking the best score from, each day. I think that it is generally good to incentivize every golfer to be as engaged as possible for every single round. So if you're Graham McDowell, you shoot 78, you could still post a 66 in the final round and contribute to your team, which I believe that's more compelling when guys are engaged throughout, as opposed to playing the weekend, knowing you're 15 shots back and trying to just get out of town.
Right. I think you make a really good point about extending the off season and making things kind of matter more, even on the weeks when you don't have a tournament. Right. So like, I know a ton of people that are obsessed with the NBA offseason and they can't get enough of what's going on with Kevin Durant.
Right.
And
Right now, the NBA is a massive story and 0 games are being played for like the next few months.
Right. And I know people that are super, super interested in that stuff. And then when the season starts, it's like, whatever. Like I'm way more interested in the drama than I am the actual games being played. I agree with you. I think you raise good points. I think my only the other side of that though is what happens if I'm just making this up because I don't have all the teams down pat, but say the guy in the lead shoots a 6 under par and he's doing great, but keep throwing Saddam under the bus, but his teammates shoot 82, right? It's an interesting dichotomy, but I guess you could say, well, even if your team stinks, that's why they have an individual title too, right?
Yeah. And I think they only take, the best 2 scores. So if you and somebody else, and then in the third round, they take the best 3, which they overthought the whole team thing. They had the good model. It's like, hey, make this like F1 or whatever. And it's like, okay, we will, but we're going to handpick some of these teams. We're going to do a draft week 1. We're not going to do it week 2. We're going to change the rules from day 2 to day 3. Like, Greg, You overthought it, buddy. Just like, relax a little bit.
See, the fact I am like the most obsessive golf fan you'll ever meet. The fact that I didn't even know, like, is this written down on their website? All
I
the
don't
rules?
remember because it took me like a long time to like. I think I had because I've also I've also seen the stuff that they send to the media, which is much more comprehensive. The website
Right.
is like, I mean, I could build that website in 24 hours, and there's not a ton of information on it, but they do send out more like in media releases, which is how I have had to figure all this stuff out.
Right. I mean, I know they don't have one in Vegas, I don't think this year, but would you be interested in going to cover one of them just to check it out?
I think the answer has to be yes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just to see it, right? I mean, golf tournaments in general are very different when you get there. And I think being there, feeling the vibe, talking to some guys, I think is of value. I don't know what I would expect to see or how different it would be from a regular tour event or a major championship or the contrast there. But yeah, I think like if they announced that they were going to Shadow Creek in November,
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, like I'll go.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that kind of does rub me the wrong way about it, and again, it's a startup, so I understand why they're doing this. But have you noticed how it's almost like Norman and the PR guys are like telling the commentators and the players, like, go all in on how happy you are. Like, you need to keep banging the drum of how happy you are. And to me, the more you have to tell somebody, oh my gosh, all of our concessions are out. There's 6,000 people on grounds. Patrick Reed's wife has never seen him smile so much in 2 days. It's a different vibe. It's a different atmosphere. I get why they're doing it, but it rings a little hollow to me and is kind of a sign that, okay, if you're trying this hard to make everybody know how happy and how great you are, that might be a sign of, a more of an impending sense of doom to come.
It just seems so phony, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like Jerry Foltz, who I mean, I hope he's getting a ton of money because he is just the mouthpiece. To describe how, the merchandise stand, which was so well stocked, perfectly stocked, is now running low. It's like, okay, bud. Like, one, no one gives a shit, and two, like, it's such a try hard, which I know definitely rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, and listen, again, it's too early to judge. Like, the amount of viewers on YouTube, the amount of people that go to the event, like, it's unfair to totally judge a startup in their second month. But there are a lot of aspects of it that I'm just really curious about the staying power, because, I mean, how many of the people that you think are tuning into LIV right now are tuning in because of the curiosity aspect and the spectacle aspect? And that's something we talked about a little bit before. Once that passes, what's the sell?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the sell is going to continue to be, we have Brooks Koepka, we have Phil Mickelson, we have Bryson DeChambeau, we have these guys that and
none of those guys are breaking par, though. Like what happens if those guys don't play well? Which is another good point. That
I don't know. Ricky Fowler is still the most popular golfer on the planet, and he hasn't played well in 3 years.
Yeah, no, it's a fair response. It's a fair rebuttal. But one of the most interesting points that I've heard, might have been your colleague Kyle Porter that was tweeting about this, but like, are these guys that go to LIV, are they going to stay competitive? And how are we going? Because the only time that we're really going to be able to judge the state of their game is the majors. And you have to worry that a lot of these guys, are they going to stay sharp? Are they going to still contend in majors? Like, let me ask you a question. If Brooks finishes T35 in the LIV event and they hang a 60 or 70 to 1 on him at the Open Championship, like, are you betting that?
Oh boy. I mean, I've made a lot of bad bets, but like, no, I'm not. Right?
Yeah.
Also, because he hasn't been that good otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, you can sub in any of those guys too, Rick. Like DJ 40, 50 to 1, Bryson maybe 100 to 1. He's been 100 to 1 in recent PGA Tour events and majors. Like Brooks, like how do we judge these? How do we judge these guys? Right? I mean, LIV doesn't even. I think we get traditional stats from LIV, right? But I mean, even if you're doing strokes gain, like if the baseline is like Jediah Morgan, and I'm done with Saddam, he's taken enough drive-bys already. But if the baseline is Jediah Morgan, right, then how much does your 5 strokes gained on the field really matter, right? So what's the most fascinating thing for me to see is, do the guys that go to LIV, let me ask you this again. Any of the guys that have gone to LIV, so Bryson, Brooks, DJ, do any of them win a major in the next 3 years?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. And I think I would heavily bet the no side of this, because one, there's just so many guys who can win majors. And if you handpicked 5 or 6 guys, I would say no, they don't win one anyway. But I'm like a big believer. Like, I've unfortunately been in the OWGR calculation and like I've been deep down that rabbit hole. I'm of the belief that LIV is not going to get OWGR points anytime soon. And I am of the belief that and I've started to run the numbers on this. If by the time we get to the Masters, these guys are going to have their OWGR ranks tank. And I don't even think there's a pretty good chance these guys don't play in majors, let alone win them, because they're not going to qualify for them. There's obviously exceptions in Dustin Johnson and Brooks Koepka, guys that have qualifications via victory, but I think there's a chance they don't even get to play them. And it's not because the majors are banning them. It's because they're not going to qualify.
Yeah, because I don't know, the OWGR stuff has always been the most fascinating thing to me, because they really seem like the organization with the most power. Did more stuff kind of come up on this recently? Because I want to stay with the OWGR thing for a second.
So they are notoriously secretive on the application process. Why will they not admit tours? How they're notoriously very secretive in that manner. I have spoken with a couple of people who are much more knowledgeable about it than I am, and kind of know some of these guys at the WGR. So there's kind of 2 things going against them here, going against LIV. There's 7 board members that are going to make this decision. 2 of them are the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour. So they don't have 2 votes. I'll tell you that for free.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to get 4 of the other 5 to vote in favor. There is a lot of speculation that they will not issue points to a tour of only 54 holes with no cut, and that they will not. This is the other one that I'm like, I trust a source that the OWGR will not issue points to a tour unless their average participants for the year is like 70 or 75. And the PGA Tour can get points for the Tour Championship and all these WGCs, because on average, they are over 70 participants in every event. So there are a few things that I think are really going to keep the LIV guys away. And after all that, Andy, even let's assume that, okay, we are going to issue LIV OWGR points. They could sit on that decision for 18 months. And in 18 months, these guys are like 300th in the world.
Yeah. Well, Michael Kaiser in the chat brings up, well, they'll go to the Asian tour. Does
Right.
that could that
Yes,
work?
which is fine, but wasn't the whole point to play less golf? These
Yeah.
guys are going to have to coordinate a schedule that is them going together and playing at the same time because they need like Brooks can't go and be by far the best player in an Asian tour event. It's not going to get enough points. They need to decide together, hey, we'll all go, 5 or 6 of us are going to go and play 5 or 6 Asian tour events in addition to the LIV golf events, in addition to the majors. And if you don't play well at the Asian tour events, my God, then what happens? Right? So it's like, yes, there are other ways to get there, but doesn't that go against all this bullshit that they're talking about now about playing less golf and all this stuff? Like if they go and grind 8 Asian tour events a year, they're going to just have to say, I went for the money. They're going to have to.
Yeah. And by the way, they are committed in their contract to play what will be 14 LIV events next year. So now if you have to play 4 majors, 14 LIV events, 8 Asian tour events, that's a bigger schedule than what you would get on the PGA Tour by a lot, not to mention the fact that a lot of those events are all over the world, right? As opposed to the PGA Tours in the United States, essentially. Do you think, one of the last questions for you, because I know we're running up against the time, but this is something I saw that I was thinking about too, that a couple of people in the chat are talking about as well do you think the guys that made the move to LIV, do you think they were really kind of cocky about the idea that, oh, we're just going to go? They're not really going to ban us from majors. Or do you think some of the guys that went to LIV have really reconciled with the fact that they may be giving up the majors? Like at 30 years old for Taylor Gooch, do you think he's considered the fact that he will never play in a major championship again? Or it's just these guys are fine. They're wiping their butts with $100 bills. They don't care kind of school of thought.
Yeah, I think it's that one. I think it's, hey, we'll probably be able to play the majors. And if I never play a major again, they gave me $50 million and I play for $4 million 14 times a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if Taylor Gooch is real with himself, that the likelihood of Taylor Gooch winning a major in the next 10 years was very, very small.
Right. Right.
And maybe he said, I will take the money instead.
Yeah. Which I understand. I can't blame him for making that decision at all. It kind of goes back to the thing that Nick Faldo was saying pretty eloquently on the broadcast. I'm going to paraphrase here, but I think the one thing you have to think about with these guys is, yes, of course, obviously the money's great, but you still have to find like meaning and purpose in your life. And I thought that was very powerful, the way that he said that. And I think if you look at some of these guys during their press conferences, instead of, especially Phil and Brooks, and I'm not sitting here and saying that at this stage of the game, they regret their decision. But I do think that these guys that went to LIV, every single one of them are only in the position that they were in because they are in the top 0.1% of competitiveness, right? You cannot be a professional athlete without being one of the most competitive people in the world. And I do wonder if, like, at a certain point, it's sick when the money hits your bank account. And it's probably going to be sick for the next year having that money in your bank account. But 5-6 years from now, when you're completely irrelevant from mainstream golf and haven't played in a Masters in 5 years, like, are they going to be happy? That's kind of you're making a trade. It's a deal, right? And I think how that deal pays off to you internally is probably different for every person.
Will Zalatoris, and we can get out of here, but Will Zalatoris tweets out that he is not going anywhere, which I love that he says. There have been a lot of rumors surrounding LIV Golf and of specific guys potentially leaving. Now I've begun to hear rumors that I might be going to LIV. I've heard every rumor about every player. I've not heard a single one about Will Zalatoris ever going, but maybe he has, and he felt the need, Andy, to let us know that he is not.
Right, which is awesome. It's just like an awesome flex from Zalatoris. I mean, I'm with you. I have had my ear to the ground with this stuff, and I've not heard him mention positively or negatively regarding the LIV stuff at all. But I like this move for him. Zalatoris is a guy that we haven't talked about a lot in terms of what it would mean if the PGA Tour lost him. But to me, and this is maybe just because I'm so high on his talent, he's like a top 5 to 10 guy in terms of importance. And I think, especially if you are correct about them potentially not being able to play in major championships, Zalatoris is the type of guy that could finish his career with 4 majors, right? So why would he ever in a million years want to take that risk?
I agree with you. This it's reeks of like, well, nobody's asked me if I'm going to LIV. I'm just going to tweet it out, which I think is hilarious. But good on you, Will. All right, Andy, we're entering kind of an interesting little week because Tiger's going to play golf on Monday. He's going to play Monday on television. JP McManus Pro-Am. We're going to scoot right over to the Scottish Open, which is now a co-sanctioned event. And then before you know it, Open Championship. So we're going to have to adjust our body clocks, sir, because, oh boy, for me, that's like 8 hours ahead. And the East Coast, Andy, that's like 5 hours ahead.
Have you seen the Scottish Open field, by the way? It's sick.
Stacked.
Yeah. So is the JP McManus, by the way, for what it's worth.
How about this? JP McManus. There have been 25 men ever to be the number 1 player in the world since they started doing this. 25 ever. 13 of them are playing the JP McManus Pro-Am. Over half.
Who is JP McManus? Do we know?
I looked this up. I think he's like a banker, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Hold on. I was looking this up. I think he's like a banker. It's like Charles Schwab or something. Hold on. He is a Irish businessman and racehorse owner.
Wow.
Oh, and he's one of here we go. This is probably the thing that people would know. He's one of the biggest shareholders of Manchester United, which sounds pretty good.
Yeah. And I believe that it's at Adair Manor, right? Which is correct. That'll be cool to get a look at because I think they have the Ryder Cup there in 20 years. Yeah. 6, 8 years, maybe. I don't know.
So it was supposed to be 2026 or 7 or whatever, but then it was moved back a year. So whatever they're on even or odds now. It's like
right.
Right. Also, JP McManus bought that resort, that whole thing. So yeah, makes sense. Pretty sick.
Last question for you. I feel like this has gotten a little bit swept under the rug because of all the LIV stuff. Where do we stand on Tiger Open Championship week? Like there's been there was a picture that came out. He was like practicing his swing at a soccer game. Like what's our,
I'm in.
Yeah. Everyone was talking about, just wait till St. Andrews. St. Andrews is his best shot. Like where do we stand at Tiger right now?
I mean, I'll be at full froth by the time we get there Thursday. I mean, right. I think that, if we go back to January, we would have said, this is the best spot for him. We would have said that. The walk, the setup, an Open Championship, yada, yada, yada. I think it was pretty brilliant to skip the U.S. Open as much as I would have loved to have seen him there. That place would have eaten him alive. And then this JP McManus thing, I know it's like a fun, silly little hit and giggle, but for Tiger, who was not going to play the week before a major championship anyway, this gives him like just enough of interesting, I don't even want to call them like competitive reps, but like quasi-competitive reps.
Yeah.
I think like this, it really shaped up to be like a good schedule for him, I think.
Yeah. So we've done this game every major with Tiger, and we've done it in like the low 40s. I'm going to bump it up a little bit to put the pressure on you. If I gave you like T25 with Tiger, are you going over or under?
I was hoping you were going to make it like 35.
Yeah.
I still think, even though it is flat, like he's still gonna have to walk like 7 miles a day or something like that, whatever it ends up being. Which I still think we are going to get like his best golf on Thursday and Friday. Like I'm almost certain of it. So I would still probably take the over here, but if it was 35, I'd think about it because I do think that, and I think what we're going to get is I think we're going to get spurts of really good golf. I think whether it's like 6-hole stretches at a time, or maybe he's like 2 under after round 1, you know what I mean? I think we're going to get a little bit of magic, right? Whether it's just creative shots that he pulls off or 6 or 7 holes at a time. I think we're going to see some good stretches.
Yeah. Well, I'm incredibly excited either way. I cannot believe that this is the last major of the year. It feels like it's just all cramped together, but I couldn't be more excited. I had a friend who was at the Old Course a week and a half ago, just as they were putting the grandstands up. This is typically, it's close with the U.S. Open. I'd say still this is probably my favorite major. So I'm pumped, man. We got some fun stuff coming up.
All right. Well, we will be here to cover it all. You can follow Andy on Twitter. He is available at ADPLAC Sports. You can find me at RickRunGood. Armina does all the hard work behind the scenes. Mina, run the outro. See ya.